Hello everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to day 24 of the holiday card series for 2024. Today I'm using the Snowman in Sweaters stamp set and dies from Sunny Studio, and I'm actually going to be creating two of the same card, which was very fortuitous when it comes to the coloring, and you'll see why in a bit, because I have a huge dilemma when it comes to the coloring that I could not anticipate, and you'll see when we get there. So I'm going to be coloring the snowmen with alcohol markers. I'm using Copic Markers today. So I'm first stamping them on some solar white cardstock from Nina in a Copic friendly ink, an ink that will not smudge, it will not bleed. It works beautifully with alcohol markers. The ink I'm using is Intense Black from SSS Stamp. And there's quite a few companies out there with the same black ink, and they all call it Intense Black. I think Lawn Fawn, Hero Arts, a bunch of companies have an ink that behaves like this. That's perfect for alcohol marker coloring. So since I was going to be making two cards, I decided to just go ahead and rotate the plate on my stamp wheel so that I can stamp a second grouping of these snowmen. Almost looks like I've created a wreath of snowmen, but I did cut them apart so I could color them more easily. So like I said, I'm using Copic markers. I'm going to do some fairly simple coloring today. Not a whole lot of blending with the colors, mostly just a light shade and a dark shade for each kind of area. So for the red areas, I did a lighter shade of R35, filled those all in, and I'm actually going to finish coloring the red on this first one before I move on to the second one. For the darker color, I used R59, and I'm going to add some shading onto the hat and also the coat on this first snowman. And then I added a little bit of shading on the earmuffs and also on the scarf and the mittens. To add a little bit of texture and detail, I used an E19, which is kind of a reddish brown shade, and just drew on some little pinstripes. It's almost, suggests a corduroy coat or something like that. And it's also great for adding texture on the scarves. So I'm going to be doing that on all the scarves today. So I colored the second set of snowmen, and then it was time to start in on the green. I did a base color of G24, just a nice light mid-tone green. And then I picked out a darker green. Now I did color the top part of the earmuffs here, and then I realized it probably was just a wire. So on the second one, you'll see that I don't color in the top part. I used G29 to add in some dark shading, and everything was going well. No problems. This marker is behaving just like any other Copic marker. How was I to know that it would suddenly bloop out and bleed all over my snowman? I was like, what do I do? What do I do? I don't want to restamp this thing. The stamps are no longer on the plate on my stamp wheel. And I thought, all right, I'm going to try to fix it. My first thought was sometimes you can bring in a lighter color and you can sort of push the darker color out of that area. So I grabbed my lighter green shade that I already had out and started to color that area and thought maybe I can just take over that area and it won't be a big deal. It didn't change it very much. So then I grabbed a zero marker. This is actually my OLO marker, but Copic has one that's just the colorless blender. It's the same exact thing. And I started to really push that color back into the area on the hat. And I did this a ton. I was trying to get it to go back in, and it would start to look like it was moving back into that area. And then as it would dry, the color would start wicking away back to where it was. And so I've never cleaned up an area this large before, so I wasn't entirely sure what to do. So I kept trying to push the color back in using this clear ink. And for the most part, it was starting to clean things up quite a bit. But you can see that as it starts to dry, that dark green shade just starts wicking back away. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I've got a lot of ink going here and I'm working on a glass mat. So what it's doing is it's probably pushing that color away, and then it's hitting the glass and bleeding back up through the cardstock. So then I put some cardstock underneath, and that seemed to help. Things started moving a little bit better. And then I thought, you know what? I bet if I dried this, it would stop it from bleeding back again. So I started using my clear marker, and then right after I would hit it with my heat tool, and you can see that's when it started working really well. And I was able to push that color back into the area on the hat where it should be. Now, I probably could have been more picky with the area outside of the hat on the left side here. But after I got it to a certain point, I decided, you know what? I'm going to be die cutting this snowman out. It doesn't really matter. I really need to focus on the center area of his face, and just cleaning that up once did the trick. I still can't believe I pulled that off. That was kind of insane. So I put that marker aside. I'm going to actually open up both caps on each end of the marker. Sometimes when you get markers bleeding like that, it's just because the air pressure in the marker is uneven. It's not pressurized. Sometimes if you take your markers on an airplane and you've used them on the plane while it's in flight up in the air, and then you put the cap on and you come back to earth, and the next time you go to use that marker, sometimes you'll get this weird like splash of color like I did today. I have no idea where it came from today because I have not taken a Copic marker on a plane in years. Could be that I have not used that marker in years, and the last time I did, I was on a plane. I have no idea. But the way you can fix that is you just take the caps off both ends of the marker, and then the pressure inside the marker equalizes, and you're all good, and you shouldn't have any continuous problems. It's just kind of one of those weird things that happens every once in a while. Now, I will say in, the 10 years I've been using Copic markers regularly, this is the first time it's ever happened, and I'm still sort of in disbelief that I was able to walk that back and make it look okay. I'm going to show you both of the sets of snowmen together so you can sort of see how they compare. But like I said, I didn't want to worry about the outside of the snowman too much, so I did take a white gel pen, just added a little bit of white on that side, and then moved on. So here are the two sets of snowmen. Except for the one having a little bit more of a darker left side to the hat, I can't really tell a difference. I used the coordinating dies from the die set to cut out all three snowmen. And after I had them cut out, then I was able to really get a good comparison between the two snowmen. So I'm going to show them side by side. And like I said, the one on the left has a little bit of more shading. That's the one that had the big bloop on it. Unreal that they look so amazing next to each other. That's kind of crazy. So I'm making these into shaker cards today. And for the shaker area, I'm using this oblong die from Concord and Ninth's Nutcracker die set. I have not used the Nutcracker dies, but I eyed and spied this oblong shape right when I got the die set because I thought that is going to be so good for shakers. It fills the area on a 5x7 card so beautifully. Now these cardstock pieces are cut down a little bit smaller than 5x7. I believe they're cut to, I think it's 4.5 by 6.5. But I cut those out, I ran them through my die cutting machine together, and it cut out both at the same time, which was great. Then I put one of the frames into the corner of my stamp wheel so that I could position my greeting in the center area of that oblong window. I positioned it, put it on the plate of my stamp wheel, and then I put down some acetate that I've already cut to the size of my shaker. And I'm prepping the area with an anti-static powder tool. Now, this is heat-resistant acetate. There's a few different companies that sell heat-resistant acetate. I'm using one from Hot Off the Press. I'm not sure if they still sell it or not. I just bought copious amounts of it back in the day. So I'm working through it. But I also know that Simon Says Stamp, that their acetate is also heat resistant. So as long as your acetate is heat resistant, you can heat emboss on it. So no worries. So for this first one, I stamped my greeting in some clear embossing ink from Hero Arts, peeled up that acetate that was stuck to that grip mat inside my stamp wheel, and then I used some gilded embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. Now, because I was making 2 of these cards, it worked out really well to sort of have this first one as a test run to see how well this embossing powder would do on the acetate. Embossing powder tends to want to stick to acetate, but you'll notice that everywhere where I put that anti-static powder, the embossing powder just slid right off. So I tried to concentrate the heat just over my grading area for this first one. And then for my second one, I'm going to very liberally apply that powder everywhere. I want to make sure that that powder fully covers all of this acetate so it really prevents any of that embossing powder from sticking in areas where I don't want it. I went through the same process of inking up my stamp with the clear embossing ink and then pressing it down onto my acetate. So for this second round, it worked out so much better. I couldn't even believe it. And I actually discovered as I was cleaning up both of these pieces of stamped acetate that most of the powder that was on the first one that was kind of surrounding the outside area of the acetate was actually on the back. It was on the back of the acetate. So make sure, if you're getting that embossing powder like everywhere on your acetate, check the back of your acetate as well, because it might be sticking to the back. Acetate just is very staticky and you'll get lots of powder on it. I used a microfiber towel from Sunny Studio. Or actually, no, it's from Pink and Main. This towel is from Pink and Main just to clean off as much of that powder as I could. Whatever was left was on the back side, actually. And then I cleaned up my second one and just wiped off all that powder. And I could not believe how well that embossed. It's just beautiful. So it was at this point that I decided I actually wanted to add a frame to my window. And so there are 2 oblong dies in that Nutcracker die set from Concord and Ninth. So I just put in that second one and I cut out some matte gold cardstock from Griffin. I'm sort of in love with this gold cardstock. I recently used it in the day 22 video when I was live, and I showed the difference between the gold shade and the champagne shade. This gold is beautiful, and it is almost an exact match for the Brutus Monroe Gilded embossing powder. It's my dream. I love it. So now I have gold foil paper that matches my favorite gold embossing powder, and I also have a watercolor, and that watercolor is the color Star from Muley Watercolors. So everything matches. I just love it. All right, so for the back wall of my shaker card, I decided that I would ink blend going from some light blue to kind of a dark teal to a dark blue. So I'm using 3 colors of ink from Concord and Ninth. I've got Aqua Sky first, and I started to ink blend this first background, and then I realized I should just be ink blending both since I'm doing 2 cards. So I put the second one next to the first, and after Aqua Sky, I went on to the color Peacock. I'm going to bring that all the way down, just kind of ink blending it near the bottom. Now, on this second one, when I was ink blending it, I don't know what happened. I stamped down my brush right in the center, and it put that midnight color, my third color, this is what I'm doing now, it just put it right there in the middle. You can't really tell in the finished card, so not a huge deal, but just to show that, things happen. See right here, I've got that big spot right there on the left. It was just weird. So both of these cards, there were things that happened along the way that were unexpected, but in the end, I think both cards turned out well, and you'll see that here at the end. So I did use a little bit of mint tape around the edges of my cardstock. That's just because it is a shaker card, so there's going to be, it's going to be popped up. And if you have the color going all the way to the edge, sometimes it can peek out from underneath, and I just wanted to prevent that. So I used a little bit of a masking tape on the edges. Now to put my shaker, like the front wall of my shaker together, I used some of that mint tape from scrapbook.com just to hold the gold frame inside the outer window. And that's going to hold that in place while I adhere my snowmen. I thought it was really cute just to have these 3 snowmen kind of nestled in with each other at the very bottom of this oblong window. So I'm putting the first one, which is the taller snowman, right there in the center. And then I'm putting each of the other snowmen on either side. So just surrounding that first snowman. They are adhered to the window frame just at the very bottom. And then when it comes to actually adhering the acetate for the front wall of the shaker, I'll adhere the snowman directly to the acetate. So here's what it looks like so far, just with those 3 little guys at the bottom. And then I added my glue to the gold frame. Remember, the gold frame is not adhered to anything right now, so it does need to have some glue on the back of it. I also added glue to the back of my snowman, and then I went around the outside of my piece here and then squiggled in some of those center areas just so it really adheres to my acetate. I'm adhering my acetate with the greeting upside down, because remember, we're looking at the back side of the front wall of the shaker. And I love how that nestles in right inside that window. It looks beautiful. The position just worked out great. So I pressed that down to the front wall of my shaker, and then I eventually put paper weights on top just so it would hold it in place while I adhere the acetate to my second card. I did more squiggles of glue, getting that ready for the acetate, and then press the acetate face down onto the front wall of my shaker. Now the acetate was the exact same size as my shaker window piece, so I did actually take some scissors and trim it down a little bit, just because I had a few little pieces of acetate peeking out on the edges, but for the most part it wasn't a big deal. When it comes to actually building the shaker well and the shaker area, I'm using some foam tape from scrapbook.com. This is 3mm foam tape, so it's thicker than I usually use. I normally would not use a tape that's this thick, but for shaker cards where there's going to be sequins inside, I find that having a thicker foam tape works really well. And in order to get that bending and shaping around my oblong window, I removed both sides of the release paper. And once you take off that release paper, there's nothing keeping that tape in its straight shape. Once you take that paper off, you can bend and manipulate the foam tape. So I just put foam on the outer edges of my window and also some center areas. And then it was time to put my shaker together. So I'm using the corner of my score buddy, and that's going to keep everything in place and make it so I can adhere the back wall of my shaker even more easily. I'm using some iridescent moonshine sequins from Picket Fence, and I thought I'd finish off this pack of sequins, and it seemed to be just about the right amount, so I dumped all those in. And then I'm taking the backer wall of my shaker, and it's face down right now, and I'm just pressing that down right onto my sequins and foam tape. And I'm pressing that foam tape down really well, making sure everything's adhered. And then when I flip it over, you can see how well that fits together, and those sequins move around very freely inside. Now at this point I realized I need more sequins. I mean, it's still good, it's not bad, but when I opened up my second pack of iridescent moonshine sequins, I decided to put in even more on the second card. I guess that's the benefit of doing 2 cards at the same time, is that you can learn from the first one. I definitely did that throughout this entire card creation, from the stamped acetate to actually how many sequins to put inside. So the card's almost done. If this was just, remember, it was cut down to be a little smaller than a 5x7 card. So I just needed to adhere this to the actual card base. So I put some Tombow Extreme Adhesive on the back of my shaker area, and then centered that on my card base and pressed down. And I did that for both of these, just mimicked the same thing. Now, this oblong shape that I used from the Nutcracker Dies from Concord and Ninth, it actually does fit on an A2 card really well. But I loved having a wide, dramatic frame, so I thought 5x7 would work even better. So here are my 2 cards for day 24 of the Holiday Card Series. These cards, even though things took an unexpected turn multiple times, was so fun to create. I would love to create even more of these sometime. So we're at the end of the video, and this is when I tell you I can't believe we are this close to Christmas. We really are. We only have one more video that will go up on Monday. Normally I'm live on Mondays, but for day 25, I already have it filmed. Those of you who are members of my premium community here at YouTube have already seen the card. It's been filmed. I didn't know if it'd be day 25, but I loved it so much that it is going to be day 25. So I hope you'll come back on Monday and join me. And if I don't see you till the new year, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thanks so much for watching.